Better Preach, Episode 54, Giving Talks on Difficult Topics with Sarah Swafford. Welcome to Better Preach, a podcast for Catholic leaders on developing and delivering great Catholic talks. I'm your host, Ryan O'Hara, a 25-year vet of college and young adult ministry. Thanks for inviting me into your journey of communicating the true, the good, and the beautiful. Giving a great Catholic talk is hard to do. It takes a lot of practice, grace, life experience, confidence, and knowledge to pull it off. Now, try ratcheting up the degree of difficulty a few notches by also addressing difficult and thorny topics. Especially hot-button issues today around sexuality, gender, and marriage. This is a tall task for anyone. But every once in a while, you hear someone speak on difficult topics and they make it look effortless, almost easy, while also packing a punch. How do they do it? My guest today, Sarah Swafford, is one such speaker. With deep conviction, boundless energy, and a deep love for the people she is speaking to, Sarah is the perfect guest to help us learn how to give talks on the most difficult of topics. Sarah Swafford is the founder of Emotional Virtue Ministries. She speaks internationally on a variety of topics, including faith, relationships, and interior confidence. Engaging audiences of all ages, Sarah shares her message at school assemblies, retreats, rallies, parishes, and conferences around the world, including FOCUS and Steubenville Conferences in the United States and Canada. Sarah is a well-known author on dating and relationships and is co-host of an EWTN series on the same topic. She is also a contributor to Chosen, Ascension's confirmation program, and a co-presenter in What We Believe, The Beauty of the Catholic Faith, together with her husband, Dr. Andrew Swafford, and Dr. Marcelino D'Ambrosio. Dr. Andrew and Sarah Swafford recently wrote Gift and Grit, How Heroic Virtue Can Change Your Life and Relationships. Sarah resides in Atchison, Kansas, with her wonderful husband and their children, Thomas, Fulton, Kate, Colby, John Paul, and Avila Faustina. If this podcast has been helpful to you, please let me know. Would you share a written review and a rating on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify? I've also heard that some of you may want to share a rating and a review, but you don't listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If that's the case, reach out to me on ryanohara.org/betterpreach. There's a little comment box there. You could share your kind of rating and review, and I could help you make that happen. See, this is how we do it. This is how we do it. And before we start, please be sure to stop by and say hi on Instagram at betterpreach, all one word. Let's get started. Sarah Swafford, welcome to the Better Preach podcast. I am so excited to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
It is really great to get time with you. I'm a fan, and I just love getting to talk about this kind of stuff. I love what you're doing. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, Sarah. Wow, I'm really honored by that. I want to start just recently in 2023 at the Seek conference. You gave a fantastic keynote on dating and relationships and God's purpose and the struggles that many college students and young adults are finding today. You were authentic, you were empathetic, you were bold, and you were really willing to go there around kind of these topics that we haven't always been able to talk about very well. And so I saw just like a masterclass in you as a communicator, as a teacher on this really important topic. But I had this thought as I was watching that and listening. I thought, I bet it wasn't always that easy. I bet it always didn't look that effortless. Could you take us back actually to those early days? How did you get started in speaking? And what were some of the kind of growing pains early on as you talked about chastity and dating and relationships? I'm sure you learned some things along the way.
Oh my goodness. Like I joke, I'm so glad we have 4 hours to talk about how all the times I screwed up and messed up and went home crying. So, if you would have told me as a high school student or even a college student that I would do anything like what I do, I would have laughed at you. I would have laughed at being an author, and I would have laughed at being a speaker. So I think
Mm,
it's so funny where God just blows up your plans. I always joke with people that my dad used to make me read at church in high school because it was, quote, good for me. And so I would get up there and I would shake so bad, like the whole
seriously.
ambo would shake. And these little old ladies would come up to me afterwards and be like, "You tried so hard. Good job." And I'm like, I almost threw up. I'm never doing this again. Like I
Oh, it's hilarious.
hated. And I always joke with people, I'm a recovering perfectionist. I'm a recovering, I really like, especially high school and college and even junior high, high school, college. I really worried about people thought of me. Like
Yeah.
that was just something that I was like, I was bullied and so bad in seventh grade, I had to switch schools.
Yeah.
So I always kind of had this like guardedness and just like, okay, gosh, I just need to like make it. I need to like keep all these different people happy. I just had a lot of walls. I was kind of a chameleon. I was a
Sure.
poser. I just kind of said whatever people wanted me to say, like with which group I was in. So I was a really great I was a really great God Squad girl. I played the youth group game really well, but I also
Sure.
played the party scene really well. And I think a lot of people didn't know who I really was, and I
Mm,
didn't really know who I was. So it's funny to me because someone told me one time, show me your misery, I'll show you your ministry. And I'm
mm.
like, lo and behold, here I am talking about dating and relationships and identity wounds and healing. And it's like shocking that, no, not
Yeah.
shocking at all. This is what I do. And this is the topic that God chose for me. So I did not grow up in an environment where I wanted to be in front of people or anything like that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I did grow up in a house and in a environment where my parents raised me. Both my parents are leaders. Like, just my mom is the dean of students here at Benedictine, and my dad
Oh,
runs a
she
home for
really?
handicapped adults.
Oh, I
Yeah, my
didn't know
mom's a
that.
rock star. Yeah, my mom's amazing. Dean Henry,
Wow.
come get a hug. She's amazing. So, and then my
Huh.
dad ran a home, has had a home for handicapped adults for over 40 years, and was
Mm,
our
that's
mayor and
beautiful.
our senior representative and all that kind of cool stuff. So I was used to seeing people lead, and I love to jump in and help. And my parents really raised me with a like see a need and assist kind of thing. And
Sure.
so it's also not shocking that when I was in college going through my own healing, and a lot of people who've heard my testimony, I'm not shy about what my wounds and what I've like discovered. And it's why I have such a heart for social media and for all these young adults navigating social media, because I was a train wreck. Can't even imagine what my life would have been like with social media and with a phone.
Oh, isn't that so true? I've had the same experience of like, again, I'm dating myself a bit, but I was a college student in the 90s. I literally had my first email as a junior, and I am so grateful that I didn't have to deal with all of that.
Exactly. Yeah, no, and I had the pink razor phone, like, after I graduated high or college, and I thought that was cool. I had so much that I had to work through in college, and even just my relationship with God, I share with a lot of people. I kept God at a distance too because the ultimate rejection was being rejected by Him. And
Yeah.
so I put on a front with Him, and my life was exhausting. And so I watched this battle rage. It's the human battle, but it also is just, I tell young adults, I'm like, if you feel like you don't know what the heck you're doing with your life, because I always say it's okay, because this is the first time in human history that anyone has played with this particular set of cards. You
Yes.
were dealt a hand that no one know, and then also the parents out there of parenting these young adults. Hi, like there is no rule book. There's no like, what did my parents do? There's nothing like that because it
Right.
doesn't exist. And so I think we need to give ourselves a little bit of grace, so that's where my whole ministry, emotional virtue, everything that came out of that was literally me sitting in an environment going, holy cow, like how do we answer this? Like
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. And I just wanted to be there for them. So when I was in the dorms, I my whole ministry started because my kitchen island in my one bedroom apartment got to the point where I couldn't fit. I mean, I had girls and guys coming by like daily. I had people asking me to lunch and coffee daily, and I wanted to go with all of them. And it
Sure.
got to a point I had two little boys under two. And so I was also navigating young motherhood, and
Yeah.
so it was just wild. And I ended up giving a talk on campus out of sheer, like, I got to get everybody in one spot and say it once because I
Sure.
don't have time to keep doing
Right.
this. And
Right.
and then so I gave a talk for the women, and then the guys showed up at my door the next day and were like, "What the heck? You gave a talk on dating relationships and you didn't invite us." So then I had to give a men's talk. And but then I got smart and realized that I had girls, like I gave this men's talk at Seek one year, and there were like, I thought maybe like five. The guy, Focus asked me to give a men's breakout. And I was like, you want me to do what? And, but I was like, yeah, I want to do that. Cause like, I basically just wanted to tell them all the things the women were telling me. And so I thought we'd have like 500 guys, like Benedictine guys or whatever that knew me.
Sure.
And I walked into the arena and there were over 3,000 guys in that room. And there were girls hiding under the bleachers trying to hear what I was going to tell them. And so I was like, this is awesome. So I started getting smart and just putting all the men and women together and just saying the same thing. Because there's times in my talk where I will speak to the men. And I literally am doing it to speak to the men, but also so the women hear me and hear what I say to the men and vice versa. And I've had so many times where people of the opposite sex will come up and be like, I had no idea. Like, I love it when high school boys are like, you just changed my like thought on women and dating. Like I just didn't know that they were struggling with that, or I didn't know, So long story short, when I got into all of this, it was literally me going before the Lord saying, no, you are not, this is not me. I cannot do this. I would throw up. The little adoration chapel at Steubenville, when I spoke at my first Steubenville, I puked in the bushes right outside the adoration chapel. Like I threw up. I was so nervous. It was bad. I literally was like, I don't think I can do this. And Stefanic was like, you don't really have a choice. I'm like, great, thank you. Okay, thanks for, So he basically was like, you're the only female speaker. You have to do this. And I'm like, okay. So they prayed over me and I went out there and I really just talk. People laugh because when they meet me in real life, they're like, you sound the same as you do on stage. And I'm like, there is no stage Sarah and Sarah in life. Right. It's the same. I say like and and right, and it's not very polished. But the feedback I get is that people feel like I am talking to them and that I like am just zoned in with one person. And that warms my heart because like I'm up there not to hear myself talk. I'm up there because I'm trying to convey like how loved they are and how this message is like gonna change your life. It changed mine. And so I have never, I just so you put it out there, talk about falling on your face 100 times and shout out to everyone who gets back up and does it again, because that I have really, if you look back at some of my original talks, the original PowerPoints, I just laugh. And I'm like, wow, it's amazing that this actually went somewhere. Because it's so raw and I love that. And so those beginning days, one thing I learned really quickly was, I speak on dating and relationships, and I was like 25, 26 when I started. And, I would walk into a room of college women and they would all have their arms crossed and like total like witch face. Cause they were just like, don't walk in here in heels and tell me what to do. Like you could just see like they had just this like wall, like, do not tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And I learned very quickly, this is why I show pictures of my family and my kids. Is because it's an instant like, oh, like she's not here. She's a mom. She's like an old lady that's here who basically just did her hair so that I have a little street cred with these women, like, but I'm here because I love you and I'm not here to like tell you, like, I'm not Debbie Downer or Benny Buzzkill. I'm not here to ruin your life. I am here because I love you and I was lied to and I'm still angry about it. And if I can say anything that helps you in this time in your life, then that's what I'm here for. And for them to see me like married with kids, it's all of a sudden it's like, oh, she's just here to help. But I gave a couple talks where I just felt like they hated me. And trying to speak in front of high schoolers are hands down the toughest audience you will ever speak in front of. And so you have about 48 minutes bell to bell to try to convince them of God and chastity and friendship and virtue. Good luck. So that's probably one of the hardest things is walking into a high school and there's a poster in my face. It's like Sarah Swafford, Gem, 2 p.m., chastity speaker. And I'm like, shoot me. Someone shoot me. 1,000 kids. So I love it. But there's a lot of times where I've had to learn like, okay, that did not work. Okay, that worked. No, that did not work.
Could you give me an example of something that you're like, I tried that. I thought that was going to fly, but it didn't.
Yeah. The topics I speak on are, dating, relationships, modesty, porn. It's like all these super, friendship, toxic friendship being used, your identity, just being overwhelmed, insecure, anxious. I bring up all these like deeply personal things. And I think one of the things that I learned very quickly was I used to look at people in the eye as I was giving the talk. And I would like honestly make them uncomfortable because they thought I was like reading their soul or talking to them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
sure.
I learned really quickly, especially when I do high school or junior high or college even, I actually pick focal points around the room. I look at what do you call it? Like a walkway, or I'll
Sure.
pick out a couple lights. And when I first started speaking, I just stood completely still because I think I was afraid if I moved, I'd forget everything I was going to say. So I got better at like walking around the stage, like moving. I think people like it when you move a little bit because
Yep.
you become I mean, again, their attention span is short.
Yep.
So being able to even like interact with them. So I learned very early on that, I like to move around and I like to not look at people because it makes them uncomfortable. I'm a very emotional speaker. I usually cry at least once I talk. And it's just because like I'm so passionate about it and I feel so deeply and I have like stories and souls. Like I have like thousands of stories and souls in my head that I'm talking about when I talk about these things. And it's
Yeah.
so deeply personal for me. So, and then I also have people who are like, this is the first time they've ever heard anything like this. And so it's profound. There's a lot of attack involved in this as well, because I literally am taking a baseball bat to a hornet's nest and the devil's it. And I love it, but it's also
Yeah.
like, okay, bring it, #bring it. But also like, I have holy water. I have priests pray over me before. I have priests pray over me after. I go to confession and ask for like a special blessing for anything that, like attack that has come upon me. When you stand in front of 1,500 high schoolers and literally go after deep sin, it's like,
Yeah.
it's awesome. Right. But, I've learned like, I have to have my emotional, spiritual A game. I have to be on it in order to do this ministry. And, I pray like never before. I feel like never before. It's so intensely personal because of the things I talk about. So
Yeah.
I've learned very quickly, like you said, what did I do wrong the first couple of times? Early on, you're like, it's all on me. I have to have this perfect talk. I have to nail every line.
Mm.
And it's a way to kind of feel like it is you doing it. And I think the better I got at it was actually when I became more free. The better I got was when I became more free and more,
Yeah.
honestly, more okay with letting the Holy Spirit lead. And so I have a skeleton of what I want to say, but I used to feel like I had to plan out every word. And, that's
Was
really
that
stressful.
the perfectionist in you?
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. So even when I write Steubenville talks now or Seek talks, I will sit with a piece of paper and I actually write out like what I want to say, almost like writing it out like a book. Like I
Mhm.
write out.
Mhm.
And then I go through and I move things around and I cut things out. And my advice, like in building a talk, take a sheet of paper and I draw a line down the middle and
Mm.
I write ingredients on one side and then I write order on the other side. So I let my
Nice.
brain just go on ingredients. So like, what are the kinds of things I want in this talk? And it's almost like having
Yes.
a toolbox. In my toolbox, I have a lot of different stories, points, content, things that I really want to say, things that's like, that would be so helpful, slides that I want to use.
Sure.
And I just start building it out on one side. And then I go back and I think about what order I want to say it in.
Yeah.
And then I watched a TED talk on YouTube one time, but he talked about this ebb and flow of a talk where you like start high energy and then you kind of give them something to chew on. And then you tell another story to bring it back, get them back engaged, and then
Sure.
go back down with another point and then end with a loving challenge. So I've always
Mm.
built my talks kind of like that because you can't, again, you can't start
No.
really high and then take them somewhere serious and never bring them back. It's like, wah, wah. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you want them to really move with you through a talk. Then what I do is I take all those outlines that I was telling you about where I write things down and, I take those outlines, I write stories out just from my own head. And then
Yep.
if you watch me, I'll come up on stage with like a sheet of paper. When I'm doing a Steubenville or a Seek, if I'm giving multiple talks, I color code them. I use construction paper because I'll forget which talk and like, oh gosh, I have a Friday night keynote and then I have a Saturday day and then a breakout. So I do them in colors so my brain can remember what color it's in. And then I
Nice.
take a sheet of paper up with me and I have like, basically my slides have squares around them. And then
Yep.
I have my transitions written out. So I
Okay.
know like what slide's coming and I know what transitions next. Because if you can nail your beginning and nail your end and have your transitions laid out and know when you're going to switch a slide, then you can go up there a little more free. And then I try to know my outline really well. But I keep it up there because again, my microphone and my piece of paper are like my safety blankets.
Well, if people want to learn and study passion, they just need to pick up one of your talks. You mentioned in a talk, I think actually in the Seek talk, that there's one thing that you continually come back to in these talks, and that's the cycle of use. Why has
Mhm.
that been such an important piece of what God has invited you to speak about?
Yeah. I mean, for all those people out there who speak or are in speaking or whatever, I had a priest come up to me one time and he looked at me and he was like, "Yeah, I've heard you speak a couple times. You typically say the same things all the time. Like, are you ever going to get any new material?" And I was like, "Wow, Father, thank you. Thank you, Father." Like, and I mean, whether or not he was just, in a choleric mood or just being, he was just sassy in a mood or whatever. And I took that, again, the human in you is like, "Oh,
Yeah, it
thanks."
hurts. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I took it to Jason Everett, blessed Jason Everett, and my good friend I basically was like, "Jason, like, what in the world?" And I said,
Yeah.
how would you like handle this?
All right.
Because I
Great
spent
question.
years perfecting how I say really hard things and how I
Yep.
want to say really hard things. And cycle abuse is absolutely top of the list. And Jason just looked at me and he's like, "So, like, at what point did your talk become ineffective? Like, is it ineffective? Like, are you tired of giving it?
Sure.
Do you think it doesn't do anything anymore? Do you think that a new generation doesn't need to hear this? Because, it does change every 4 years. The junior high school, and college crowd cycles out. And there's a whole new group of people that need to hear this." And I just left that conversation with such freedom because
Mm,
he also has been giving a very similar talk for
sure.
20 some years. And every time I've heard Jason's talk like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. Every time I leave going, "Yes,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, yes." And like, I feel like I can run through a brick wall and it's like gold. It is absolute gold. And I watch like another generation hear it and I watch another group of people hear it for the first time. And if I had $1 for every person that come up to me to be like, "Yeah, like I wear a chastity ring because of Jason Everett. Yeah, I signed a commitment card. I was a virgin on my wedding night because of Jason Everett." I'm like, okay, so what point did we deem him ineffective?
Right.
So cycle of use, back to your question, I will not give a talk that if you brought me in to give a talk, like I am probably going to talk about the cycle of use. Even when I speak to like Catholic marriage conferences or
Sure.
women's conferences where the zone is 18 to 80, because I've had 75-year-old women come up to me bawling, holding them, because they said, they're like, "I will not use you and I will not let you use me." Like that just changed my life. There's a depth of healing where they didn't even realize they were being used or using another person. And that could have been 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And there's like healing that's happening because they needed those words to
Mm,
articulate something that's going on in their life. And I have a lot of high schoolers that come into me and say, like, "You just put words to like everything I'm feeling." And I didn't have the words to articulate that. And it really shows them. I think, I mean, Jason and I joke that if we're going down as martyrs, we're going down by ex-boyfriends or ex-girlfriends. Like that's our joke. Cause like, there's just a lot of times where I will come to a high school, come to a college, go to a seat conference and people walk away going, "Shoot, dang, I don't know if I'm with the person that I'm supposed to be with right now." Or I need to have a crucial conversation with my significant other. And again, it's not because I said anything other than I just convicted them in the fact that they're either being used or using someone else. And they just never realized it. They never had that framework to even talk
mhm.
about it.
So if you've got, a 75-year-old woman, but also a 15-year-old girl or, you know, men and women of all those ages, this is not a new issue. And yet it's probably exacerbated by kind of the culture today and smartphones and social
Yeah.
media or whatever. But what is the perennial heartache and why is this something that hasn't really been talked about, but when you do talk about this concept of being used and using other people, why has that resonated so much?
Mhm. I don't know. I think back to my own upbringing, like I'm 40. Like I grew up in the 90s. I was an 80s baby, 90s kid.
Yeah.
And I think that for a lot of us, there was like a game being played and it was real and da da da. But when I was in the dorms and I was watching this whole like when to be honest, we can like, social media is its own beast. But really, I was also seeing texting. Texting was really messing with like dating and so cycle of use, I'm very quick to make sure everyone knows it's not just being used physically, but also using
Sure.
people emotionally.
Right.
And you had chatted about, or we had chatted about just like kind of putting my finger on it. I think honestly, it was social media, texting, that early, like late 2000s, like Facebook coming out, Instagram coming out. I think it was this navigating. Like I just remember looking at Swaff and saying, "This is going to change dating forever," because like this whole social cues, like flirting. change. Okay, so now a guy or a girl could have like 3 or 4 people that they're quote unquote talking to that the other 3 or 4 people don't even know exists. So you could be totally invested in this relationship and he's literally copying and pasting the same text message to 3 other girls and the same night. Like that just, and it was just destroying what I was seeing, destroying trust, destroying the dating scene, or just like, I feel like, you know who I am because we've been hanging out and you've been picking up on my flirtation and you've been picking up on my social cues and we're all a bunch of friends that are hanging out. And now all of a sudden it's just very fragmented. And, this idea of using people. So not only do you have like a whole new dating scene, but you also have this new identity crisis called I have myself and then I have my social media self.
Yep.
And I can manipulate one and I'm scared of being the other one because it's really hard to keep up all of these identities, all of these, it was exhausting. And so
Yep.
do I think that emotional virtue I think the Holy Spirit was like, hey, can you speak into this? So my talk, I have honed it, like literally down to the point where I have tried different things and go, no, it works better in the beginning, not the end. I need to like, I don't talk about God in most of my talks until at least halfway through.
Okay.
I don't share my testimony until at least halfway through. Why? Because I had so many young adults be like, hey, don't tell me what to do. We're not friends. You know what? Like, you don't know me. You don't know my struggle. Like, why do you think you can come in and tell me how to live my life?
Mm.
And so I spend the whole first 10 minutes of every talk I give, literally introducing myself, loving on them, telling them like, I struggle with this. I still struggle with this, because you never completely get over all this stuff. I mean, it's not like you just wake up and you're like, gosh, 28, I just feel totally secure in myself. I'm so secure. I have no anxieties. It's just not true. You're always constantly evolving. And so giving them tools to do that, telling them they're not alone, telling them that, it's every single person in this room is fighting a hard battle. It might not be your battle, but be kind because every single person in this room is fighting a battle. And then I open up about mine. And I think instantly they're just like, whoa. Like, this chick is real. She is not here to judge me. She just outed a bunch of her crap. Like, and this is real. And so I've learned, like, I put the cycle of use, like, kind of about a fourth, like, it's one of the first, like, series points that I hit because I want them to know that, like, they're not alone and be able to start naming kind of like, okay, gosh dang, like, I really need to look at some of my relationships because I've never thought about it like this. And then I build into kind of, as I build the talk, it's like, well, then what are we going to do about it? I can give you the problem, but no one wants just a problem. They want the solution. They want the answer. And so Jesus and the church come in, as the answer. And I think that they're like, I think they know that I'm probably like love God, or they kind of like in the beginning, I think they kind of know that I have a faith, but it's kind of neat for them to not completely dismiss me. Cause like I have high schoolers and college students are like, is this a God talk? Is she going to come in and just talk about God? Like literally to my face.
Yep.
Like, oh, okay. So when I start talking about sex and relationships and things like that, they're like, whoa, she's talking about this. Like, so I think the realness is really good. I think the cycle of use helps them to understand that, like, I get it. Usually I look at people's faces and they're like, I cannot believe she's talking about this. But it's like, why not be real? I mean, I could come in here and talk about a lot of things that might be helpful, but I just want to go straight to the core of healing. That's what my talks are about.
My guess is that many young people haven't, I'm guessing you're naming something that they're experiencing and doing, but they don't know it. Like, it's not conscious. Like, I intend to use someone today, or I'm getting something out of this relationship and I'm able to actually look at it and reflect on that. No, we're doing the things we're doing, but you've kind of pulled the veil back and said, do we realize what's going on here? And in some ways, I would think smartphones, texting, social media just amplified that part of us that would tend to use another or to allow ourselves to be used. But it was just on maybe smaller scale in person back in the day. But now, like you said, you could have so many shadow relationships just through the phone or whatever. And and it explodes. And in some ways, you were an important voice to help people see how this is playing out at scale. And that's what I remember seeing, 10 years ago. I'm like, wow, I love that the Lord has revealed this and brought you into it. But I know it was connected to your own story and just your willingness to be, because it'd be one thing if you just took a kind of an academic approach to all of this. You take
Mhm.
a deeply personal, but it isn't at the end of the day, it's not about you and your story, but your story opens people up to
Yeah.
hearing about what God does have to say about all this. You said something a minute ago that I want to ask about. You
Yeah.
said one of the things you've worked really hard on is saying hard things, learning how to say hard things to a group of people.
Mm.
What's the secret? Help me say hard things to a
Yeah.
group of people.
Oh my gosh. Well, again, as a people pleaser and a recovering perfectionist, this was
Yeah.
really hard for me.
Yeah.
I remember when I wrote Emotional Virtue, there's a chapter in there about modesty because I got asked about modesty all the time. And
Yeah.
when I was writing the book, I put it like I wrote it. And then I told Fluff, my husband, I was like, I'm taking the modesty chapter out. And
Mm,
he's like, why? And I was like, because they're going to hate me. And he's
mm.
like, Sarah, like you got to put it in there. They're just going to come back and keep talking to you about it. In our new book, Gift and Grit, like it's about going all in with the Lord, and we are very real. We talk a lot about even like our own struggles with chastity, like as a couple, talking about just like underage drinking, how hard that was to make that decision, how hard it was to make all these decisions that are like, do I want to go all in with the Lord? Like what, like where am I at? And there were so many times where we would be writing, and I'm like, oh, they're gonna hate us, like
Mm.
you know what I mean? And you just, but you have like. I think this is where I've come down to. This is where I've over the years. If not us, then who? And if not now, then when?
Right.
So I had enough times where people would come to me and be like, change my life. Like you said X, Y, and Z. And I just was like, change my life. And typically the things that I said were the things that I was about to take out of the talk
Mm.
because I didn't want to do it. You know what I mean? I didn't want to be the one. It's really hard to be a public figure with these issues because it's just they're hard issues to talk about, and you never want to come across as judgmental or anything like that, especially
Yeah.
with the younger generation.
Yep.
Because you want them to trust you and love you. So one of the things I learned as a camp counselor at Camp Tekawitha, shout out, when
yeah.
I was in college was Debbie Niermeyer was our amazing like leader, and
Mm.
she would say, "Love, tough stuff, love." And then I use it as a parent, I use it as a minister, but it's like love, tough stuff, love. So when I build talks, when I have to have a crucial conversation with someone, I love them. I say to them like, hey, I'm proud of you. I love you. Let's take my kids, for instance, like I build them up. I say, I'm so grateful for this. I've seen you growing in this way. This is amazing. We need to work on this. We need to talk about this. And then, hey, how can I help you? What can we do? Like, I want to see you rock this. So like, let's talk about ways you want to do that. Instead of coming in with a hammer and just, going at people, you have to love, discipline, love. And so in my talks, you will see a lot of understanding. I tell you, like, I have a parent talk, and I always have moms come up to me and say like, so what's the line between like nagging and like, I just need you to be a functioning human being? And I laugh because I'm like, if that's not parenting, right? Like, okay, I don't want to nag you, but I also need you to be like a functional human being. And I told them one time, I think I prayed about it, and you can't be too affirming or affectionate when it comes to like people you love.
Yeah.
Because if you're affirming them and being affectionate and being loving and just like, if you're doing all the things, and when you need to say the hard thing, they're more willing to listen.
Yep.
If you're not affectionate and you're not affirming, then they don't really trust you or want to know what you think. I mean, they don't
Yeah.
really care, and they feel like you're just coming down on them, and you
Right.
don't love them and you don't respect them. I have so many stories like that where it gives me boldness to be like, all right, this sucks that I have to be the one to tell you this, but like, I'm going to lovingly tell you, like Swafford, my husband always says, there's no loving lie. So like, I'm not going to get up on stage and lie to you and tell you if this is easy or this is, you can just live the life you want.
Yeah.
Relativism is great. Like, that's just a bunch of lies.
Right.
So like, I'm going to get up here and I'm going to tell you the truth, but I'm also going to make sure that like, when you leave this talk, like they know that chick from Kansas loves them, is proud of them, wants what's best for them, wants freedom for them, would not lie to them, and is here for them.
Yeah.
And so like, when I have people go up to me and be like, I don't really like going to talks, but like, I don't remember, and I don't even really remember what you said, but I've never felt like someone cared about me more than you did on that stage.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, isn't that the whole ballgame? Like, who cares what we say? Like, they'll eventually figure out what we wanted them to hear. But I think there's so much about a posture and an attitude and a love that the Holy Spirit gives us that we need to not be afraid to show, I think, on
Hmm.
stage, especially when you're working with young adults and even adults who are just, some of them are not loved well or at all. And so
Yeah.
I love being able to stand in that place and be able to love them well from stage. I wouldn't want it any other way. And also
Yeah.
when I give a talk, I know what's going on because I'm listening, listening, listening. And I know kind of the struggle, the new struggle. I swear to you, it changes every year. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable how
Yeah.
fast it changes.
Yeah. Speaking of that, this new book, Gift and Grit, how did this book come together and how is it part of what you've seen grow and change? We talked about the kind of goalposts moving in the culture and in people's lives and, emotional virtue 10 years ago and now gift and grit today. What drew you and your husband to write this book? And what do you feel is the central message that God
Yeah.
has for us in this book?
Yeah. Oh man. So we titled it Gift and Grit because one of the things that when we went to Italy, we lived over there for a semester doing study
Yeah.
abroad with 50 college students. And one of the things that came out of that was, I felt like we would stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning just with different students, like sorting out their lives. Like it was literally, we had nothing else to do. It was pilgrimage. You know what I mean? With all of them.
Yeah.
And they were so unplugged that they were very real. They didn't have 100 things going on. We were literally just
Yeah.
traveling together and you had a lot of like bus stops, waiting, walking we were tourists. And so we learned a lot over there. And one of the things that we took away was they do not know how loved they are. Like they do not know that their life is a gift and that everything they've been given is gift and they are like phenomenal, but they just didn't see it. It was so, I mean, same way we all don't see it. We're like, but I got this and I got this, I got this. It's
Yeah.
like, still a gift, you know? And so I always say, I love the Pinterest meme. It's okay to be a masterpiece and a work in progress at the same time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like to be able to say like in front, like sit in adoration and be like, I'm a masterpiece and I am such a work in progress and my life is a gift. And I don't always see it that way, Lord. So like, help me to see it, that everything you've given me is gift. And then the whole point of my life is to give my life away as a gift. I mean, literally the happiest I think we all have ever been when you start seeing like, no, I actually want to give my life away. Like I want to be selfless, not selfish. Like when you
Mhm.
start living that way, it changes your life through virtue, through all of it. Again, we call it heroic virtue because it's so not easy because your life is a gift and you want to give it away as a gift. But do you have the supernatural grit to do that?
Yeah.
It's not just grit. It's not just like, I'm going to put on my big girl pants and like, will this? It's not that at all. It's saying like, okay, this is not glamorous. This is not comfortable. This is not what I thought I signed up for. But the Lord has me in this place right now. And I am going to make a gift of myself, even if it's hard. I am going to look at my life and get rid of everything that's toxic and not helping me grow and taking me from God, because that takes grit. It takes grit to heal. It takes
Mm.
grit to sit in front of your friends and be vulnerable and say, hey, I'm struggling. Hold me accountable. It takes grit to do those things. And what we saw with a lot of young adults was, I mean, the church is getting stronger and people can like talk a big game, but they're
Mm.
just getting hit by Mack trucks in the grit world. Like it's like they get out there and they're like, yeah. And it's like hard thing after hard thing after hard thing after hard thing, little kids, marriage, being a priest, vocation stuff. Like people are dying, people are being born. It's just like, oh my gosh, my life is wild, like chaos.
Yeah.
And how do you navigate that? So going all in with the Lord, gift and grit, how heroic virtue can change your life and relationships. That's why my 90-year-old grandparents read it and loved it. So I'm like, hey, 10 years old to 90, I think everybody can get something out of this book because it's basically about going all in with the Lord and how it's worth it, but it's really hard. And it's the only game you really want to play. But it is a game where you need to buckle up and get ready because it's not easy. But it's life changing. And what other life do you want to live? And when it's
Yeah.
all said and done, what other game do you want to play?
Amen. It's a fantastic book. I'm so grateful to have a copy to read. This word grit has landed in our collective consciousness over the last number of years. But I love how you throw a kind of a supernatural spin on it. What does the supernatural side of grit look like?
Yeah. It was funny because grit, there's books on grit. It's a kind of a catchy word.
Mhm.
But my husband and I, when we were praying through it, you know, please, everybody who loves grit and all that goes with it, don't take this personally. But there is kind of an aspect of grit that's like, I'm going to like do this to either, look good, achieve this thing, success.
Yeah.
Like I'm
Yes.
going to work out every day. I'm going to go to the gym at 6 a.m. because
Yes.
And it's very kind of self-centered. And it's
Yeah.
not meant to be like that, because there's a lot of gritty things that are good for your health and good for your mental health and good. I mean, I'm not
Sure.
kicking that around. I'm just saying, like,
No.
do we have the same supernatural grit is a 5 a.m. adoration hour, right?
Yeah.
Like supernatural grit is saying, oh my gosh, my kid is thrown up every hour on the freaking hour this night. And
Yeah.
I no longer want to be here. Like,
Yeah.
I no longer want to be mom anymore.
Yeah.
Like, or again, you have like marital issues, you have family issues, you just have all these things come up
Yes.
where it literally takes a supernatural grit to say, Lord, I do not, like, I love the Benedictines. There's a Benedictine monastery, literally the building right behind me. And they take a vow that's cool. Like, they take chastity, they take, all of the obedience, they do all those, but they actually take a fourth vow of stability. And that vow says, it's so cool. The vow in the rule, it says, God is not elsewhere. Like, God is in this, and it's going to take supernatural grit, because this is not glamorous. This is not beautiful. This is not comfortable. It's like giving a chastity to up to a bunch of high schoolers. Like, it is
Yes.
literally like, I need supernatural grit to do this. I need it, and I pray for it. So it's like, it's asking God and through the Holy Spirit to animate your soul in a way that is otherworldly. It doesn't make sense to our world, right? It
Right.
doesn't make sense to do these things. But then all of a sudden you get through it, or you grow through that healing or that virtue. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that I was able to be this free, this joyful, this loving, I didn't know these type of friendships were even existing. But it took grit by, like, having to admit to someone that I'm struggling with this addiction, or having to sit and listen to my friend for an hour talk about their addiction. There's grit in there, because it's not selfish. It's a selfless love.
Yeah.
And it's a
Yeah.
selfless. And if you want to have a rocking marriage or a rocking family or an amazing vocation, you have to have supernatural grit. You do not have it any other way. And I was kind of tired of people being lied to. And this book is literally our answer to, like, years of the question. I'm just like, how do I practically live this out? What do I need to do to have this life that I want? So it's very, very practical. We were on a podcast the other night, and the guy was like, I feel like you should retitle it the Human Formation Bible, because that is a little more accurate. And it's like, we were dying. We were like,
That's awesome.
you know what? That works. That works. I love it. I love that that's what you got out of it. So
Yeah, it's that's a great reframing, because I hadn't thought about it, but you're absolutely right that so much of the kind of ecosystem around grit as a term or as a concept is self-oriented. And to your point, some of that's really good, or it's career-oriented, hustle
healthy.
and this and that.
Right.
But thank you for helping us, the church, to see that. So the book is Gift and Grit, and it's been out for a couple months now. Is that right?
Yeah.
And I hope that people will check that out. I also hope that people would take a look at your keynote at Seek. It was fantastic. It really does that love, tough stuff, love. You demonstrate that, and you give us an example of that so well. Where could people connect with you online if they wanted to learn more?
Yeah. We're over at theswaffords.com, and you can find all the resources there. We love signing the books for Gift and Grit. A lot of people are giving them as gifts.
Nice.
Or if you want us to, like, put their names on it and stuff, we love doing that.
Sarah, you bring such infectious energy and joy, and just so grateful to connect today. I hope that people will check out the book, theswaffords.com, and I hope we can stay in touch. Thanks so much, Sarah, for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me, my long lost friend with so many friends that I have too. It's great to finally meet you. Thanks for having me.
Likewise. Thanks, Sarah. If this podcast has been helpful to you, please reach out on Apple Podcast or Spotify by leaving a written review and a rating. And all of you have millions of choices when you podcast. Thanks for press and play today. I'm so grateful. See you next time.